Welcome to Satsang. Wonderful. It's such a special and sacred time of coming together in the presence of truth. When we speak about the truth in satsang, it's not the truth as in what we call the lowercase t truth of today is the 28th, 6:30 in the evening, we're in Rishikesh. That's all true for us in this exact intersection of time and space. But the truth that we speak about in satsang is that capital T truth. The truth that says, regardless of where you are, regardless of what time it is, regardless of what date it is, of who you are. And that's the truth of satsang. So it's a very special and a very blessed time to be able to come together in this. And we'll take questions come in advance from all of our beautiful community all over the world on social media. We start with one or two of these and then open it up to any questions that anyone here may have. So the first question says, I am married with children. Can I lead a spiritual life? Of course. In fact, what I love so much about the Vedic tradition and the scriptures and the stories is almost every one of the sages, the saints, the mystics, the yogis, almost every one of them is a householder. Occasionally you've got those who are not, but almost all of them actually are householders. They have spouses, they have children. And it's a beautiful reminder that there's nothing about a spiritual life that says you have to live in a cave. Nothing about a spiritual life that says you can't have a family or have a job or have a bank account or have a closet full of clothes. That which we renounce when we talk about spiritual renunciation, yes, for some of us, our dharma is sannyas. Our dharma is complete renunciation. But that's a very small percentage, and it's certainly not a matter of it being better than the Grihastha dharma. It's just different. Some people come onto earth with the dharma of being a monastic, of being a renunciant. And I can tell you as someone who's living that, it's beautiful. It's such a blessing, such an incredible blessing. And for all of those in family life, that is also a great blessing. And the teachings of the scriptures are that through your family, if you are a householder, that is your path to God. It's not, oh, just wait till the kids are grown, wait till everyone's out of the house, wait till you can be done with this, then you can live a spiritual life. No. It's how through your family, through the household, can you live that spiritual life. And in many ways, it's even more of a challenge than the sannyasi life. Sannyasi life in some ways is easier, kyunki, matlab, you don't have to deal with so much. the householder life requires an incredible level of clarity, of actually being able to see the divine in all, of being able to actually see the divine in the loved ones, see the divine in the family. Gives us an incredible opportunity to choose peace every moment, every minute. Because otherwise there's always a fight. What should be served for dinner? How should it be cooked? How does the dishwasher get loaded? Whose turn is it to take out the trash? There's so much we fight about. But when we're committed to spirituality, then we have a core obligation to choose peace and to choose love and to remember whatever it is that's going on. We have the opportunity to choose love and to choose peace. And that's the very great special ras of a married life. And this is why they're all called different ashrams, right? We say Grihastha ashram. Not only Vanprastha or Sannyasa ashram, but Grihastha ashram also. It's an ashram. It's a phase, an aspect, a way of living a spiritual life, which is what our ashrams are. So if you're married, if you're a householder, let that be your spiritual practice. Can you see the divine in your husband, your wife, your child, your in-laws? That's what we're being called to do. Not just to see the divine only in our temples, but actually to see the divine everywhere. And we're told so clearly by God and in the scriptures that God is within everyone. And in a householder life, it's quite a beautiful challenge, quite a beautiful opportunity to actually have to see that. It's so much easier to push it away. But to actually be in it, fully in it, and yet also be unattached, doesn't mean you don't love. This, by the way, is a huge myth. So many people will come and they'll say, I'm very spiritual, मैं तो पूरा मतलब unattached हो गया. जो भी मेरा family को हो जाए, I'm unattached, doesn't bother me. That's not a spiritual teaching. Spiritual teaching doesn't say, be indifferent, be apathetic, don't care, be callous and cold. The sense of non-attachment that we speak about doesn't mean we don't love. It means I'm not attached to how you respond to my love. So I'm not attached to how you dress, how you speak, whether when I love you, you treat me with love back. I'm not attached to you dancing according to my tune. I'm not attached to you doing jaise मैं चाहती हूँ, जब मैं चाहती हूँ, जिस तरह से मैं चाहती हूँ. I'm not attached to that. Because I've realized that in reattaching myself to something deeper, higher, that actually that's where the peace and the joy and the meaning and the awakening and the transformation comes, which is in reattaching ourselves to God. Because the truth is, your mind can only think about one thing at a time. हम कहते हैं कि my mind is in a million places. But the truth is, actually, at any moment, your mind can only be in one place. So if in your mind you're thinking, अरे मैंने बता दिया कि इसी तरह से भिंडी नहीं बनती है, मैंने बताया कि इतनी नमक मत डालो, मैंने बता दिया कि ये गड़बड़ हो जाएगा. If you're thinking that, you're not also doing your japa. Because the mind can't actually do both simultaneously. If you are thinking, अरे मैं तो सब कर लेती हूँ, कोई help नहीं करते हैं, अकेले I do everything, I'm the only one, why am I always the one, मैं मर रही हूँ. If you're thinking that, chances are you're not saying, thank you, God. So, the non-attachment doesn't mean I don't love, it doesn't mean I don't care. It means I have reattached myself to actually the source. The source, that capital S source. The divine. In love, in oneness, in gratitude, in awareness, in consciousness. And I'm not going to let myself get stuck in these little things. Who's dressing like what? Who's saying what? Who loaded the dishwasher how? What got cooked for dinner? So that's the sadhana of the married life, is being married, being connected, being in love, doing our duty. Nonetheless, my mind is chanting my mantra. I'm full of gratitude to the divine. I'm seeing those beings in front of me, chahe pati ho, patni ho, bache hai, in-laws ho. Instead of seeing them as the problem or the one from whom I want something, I see them as the divine, the soul, the spirit. And here's the beautiful piece of that. My physical body can connect with your physical body. We can hold hands, we can hug, we can do all sorts of things. Physical body connects with physical body. My intellectual mind connects with your intellectual mind. We have a debate, we have a discussion, we share ideas, we plan something. But if I'm going to connect with your soul, your essence, I can only do it from the place of soul and essence in me. And so when we commit in our marriages, that yes, I'm going to, of course, appreciate your beautiful body. I love to see it. I love to see you smile. I love to hold your hand and hug you or whatever it may be. Nothing wrong in that. But along with appreciating your physical body, I'm actually going to focus on loving. The love is not a love of your elbow or your shoulder or your knee. It's a love of your essence, of your soul, which means that I'm doing that from my essence, from my soul. And so then a married life becomes this beautiful opportunity to dive into my essence, my soul, that place, that source of love within me, not the love that loves because aaj jo main chahti thi aapne kiya finally, but the love that just loves. Regardless of whether you do it or don't do it, say it or don't say it, that just loves. So that's the beautiful way of the spiritual path when you're married. And if you lose the way, again, all of our scriptures are full of so many stories of the seers and the sages and the rishis who were married. So you look at that for the beautiful inspiration. And before taking any of the other questions that came in advance. If anyone here has a question, I would be more than happy to take it. Yes, of course. Or Sandeep ji, ye panka ban kar dijiye.
How to deal with frustration?
Beautiful. He said, how do you deal with frustration? So, our guru, Pujya Swamiji, says, expectation is the mother of frustration. And acceptance is the mother of peace and joy. And so, whenever we look at a problem like frustration, there's two aspects. One is, how do you deal with it when I already have it, like it's in my lap? And then, how do I prevent it from coming in the future? So the preventative method for frustration is fewer expectations. We get frustrated with others, with the world, when we have an expectation. Now, it's very subtle because we have to expect on some level. We have to expect that the carpenter who built this beautiful hut did so in a way in which it's not going to fall on us as we sit here. Otherwise, hum satsang mein aaram se nahi baith pate hain. If we didn't have that expectation that the roof was not going to fall. When we walk onto the banks of Mother Ganga and we go for arti, we have an expectation that there's not going to be a tsunami in Ganga and that she's not going to rise up and sweep us all off the steps. Otherwise, we could not close our eyes beautifully and melt and merge in the arti. When we go to sleep at night, we have to expect that we, our loved ones, are going to wake up in the morning. And that all of that which we had when we went to sleep, our house, our health, our family, our job, our bank account, that it's all still going to be there when we wake up in the morning. Nahi to kisi ko neend nahi aata. There's no way we would be able to sleep otherwise. So it's very subtle because we have to actually have some level of expectation. The dilemma becomes when we feel so entitled to having the expectation be fulfilled. And so we expect, of course, that our loved ones or our friends or our colleagues are not going to betray us. That they're not going to harm us or cheat us or lie to us. We have to expect that. Otherwise, we couldn't have a loving relationship. We couldn't have a partnership. We couldn't have a team. And yet the truth is, we all know, in families, in companies, in friends, there's betrayal, there's lying, there's cheating. It may be on a subtle level. You tell somebody a secret. You say, for God's sakes, kisi ko mat batao. Don't tell this to anybody. And then they tell somebody. So it could be that simple level. It could be on a much deeper level. It could be a partner who steals the company out from under you. It could be a loved one. It could be a family member who behaves in ways that are not what we want, not what we would consider correct or dharmic or ethical or right, whether it's a spouse, whether it's our parents, whether it's our children. We have a lot of expectations, of course, of our children. Children have it of parents. Spouses have it of each other. The subtlety comes in love without expectation. Now again, it's very subtle because on some level, we have to expect. You have to expect that when you go to sleep at night in bed with your loved one, that they're not going to go to the kitchen and take a knife and murder you in your sleep. Right, Mother? You have to have that expectation. And yet, tragically, we know it happens sometimes. Nonetheless, we have to have the expectation. But I'm not talking on that because those, fortunately, are things that happen very infrequently. Thankfully. It's much more just the normal stuff. How we want our partners, our employees, our colleagues, our friends, our spouses, our children, our parents to act. Having the expectation is not bad as long as you can hold it lightly and gently. So have it, but have it with the awareness that you are not entitled to have it fulfilled. That there's no scripture, there's no teaching of God that says, be a good person, be a dharmic person, come to me, pray to me, and I promise that everything you want will always happen. I promise that no one will betray you or cheat you or lie to you or harm you. God never tells us that. There's no spiritual teaching that says, no matter how good of a person you are, that what you want is going to happen. In the workplace, in the home, in the stock market. And so we have the expectation because it's human and it's natural, and on a personal level, I have no idea how you would move through the world without an expectation at all. As I said, we literally couldn't even sit here. But you hold the expectation very lightly. And it's more of sort of an assumption. An assumption, this is how things are going to be. But with the awareness that I don't actually have any control over it. The only thing we have control over is our own reaction to it. Swami Dayanand Saraswatiji Maharaj, who used to live just on the other side of Ganga. He said once, he was here at our International Yoga Festival giving a lecture, and he said, the only definition of success that matters at all is not how much money you make, not where you are on any kind of ladder, but the only definition of success that matters is how you respond to the inevitable times. Inevitable, nothing you can do about it. It is bound to happen. The inevitable times that the universe does not behave the way you think it should. And so, in the prevention of frustration, we hold our expectations very lightly. And we certainly don't allow our own peace, our joy, our freedom to be hooked into someone else's actions. Because then what we've done is we've taken the absolute most precious thing in our lives, our freedom to be joyful, to be peaceful, to experience divine connection with God, to experience the truth of who we are. We've hooked that most precious thing into someone else's ignorance or confusion or arrogance or ego. And it's like we take our most precious thing, our own life, our own joy, our own peace, and we literally sacrifice it, as I say, onto the altar of someone else's confusion, ignorance, fear, ego, desires. And we should never do that, because our own freedom, that bliss, that joy, that peace, that's our birthright. People are always going to do things we don't want them to do. It's the nature of the human package. Really, I mean, it's just part of the package deal of being human. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if anyone has ever done something that you didn't want them to do. Raise your hand if you wanted someone to do something, but they didn't do it. So, we're unanimous here. Package deal of human life. The prevention is this holding of expectations very lightly. But then once it's already in your lap, you are frustrated. Your pulse is going fast, your blood pressure is up. Chances are your palms are a little sweaty, your face gets kind of red. And there's this constricting element. You notice that your stomach starts to feel like it's in a knot. There's this ball in your stomach. Your vision becomes very narrow. Suddenly, the sound of the birds is no longer in your awareness. Suddenly, the beautiful way that your cup of hot tea tastes is no longer in your awareness. The smell of the flowers, not in your awareness. Because the vision becomes very narrow about that which has happened, which is not what I want. So we tighten up, we constrict, we contract. And the solution to it, literally, is to expand. Now, it's not easy because the mind is all... Begin with the physical body. Begin with the breath. Just allow your eyes to close. And allow at least your breath to expand. Because when we are frustrated, angry, upset, our breath becomes very shallow. And it comes right up here in our chest. So we start, it's like this I'm upset, I'm kind of sympathetic nervous system overload. Allow the breath to drop low in your abdomen. And allow literally the abdomen to expand as you inhale. So I like to think about it as like you're blowing up a balloon with your breath. Literally. And it helps sometimes if it's new to just put your hands there. Can you, as you inhale, literally let the whole abdomen just expand as low in the abdomen as possible? And what you'll find is you do that for 4, 5, 10 breaths. Suddenly you've calmed way down. So you first begin in the breath. And then begin in the body. Literally. Raise your arms to the sky. Okay, God, whatever. The simple act of expanding the physical body, opening the physical body, it's got this huge impact on this constricted, contracted feeling that we have. And then you start opening the mind. So the breath is the easiest, then the physical body. Walk through nature and just literally with the arms, just sweep it in. And then we start to work with the mind. Don't think about the thing you're frustrated about. It's not about telling yourself, oh, it's okay, oh, it'll be okay. Don't even think about it. Just allow the mind to expand. Be in nature. Look at the stars at night. Look at the flowers. See how vast of a view you can get. It's actually this beautiful technique where when I open my eyes, we tend to focus on one or two things. But see if you can open your eyes and actually just take in everything without a specific attention on one thing that's in your visual field. So just try it for a moment. Everyone just close your eyes. And when you open, I don't want you to look at something. Just allow the eyes to be soft and take in the whole visual field without actually attaching the awareness into any one thing. So open the eyes. Open the eyes. Do you notice how it feels to just sit here with total awareness, not fixated on one point or another point? It's just this vast expansiveness. And if you do that, what you'll find is you are out of the grip of the moment. You're out of the constriction of the mind. You're out of that contracting in the physical being. And then quite clearly ask yourself what is my personal favorite question, which is there an alternative? Like, is there a possibility that I might respond to this moment in some way other than frustration? Is this the only way? Would every single person alive today, every person who has ever lived, would every single person respond exactly the same way that I did? And what we find is usually it's not true. And you see it even just in like a family or a friend circle. 10 people will be sitting together. One person makes a comment or does something. Couple people think, my God, वो तो बहुत ही rude था. Cannot believe it. क्या समझती आप अपने आप को? Another handful of people think, हाँ, yeah, लेकिन इसमें कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है, चलो छोड़ो. And then you've got a few people who are saying, क्या हुआ? क्या हुआ? मैंने सुने नहीं. Notice नहीं किया. So in just a few people sitting around a coffee table, one person says something or does something. And even out of that 9 or 10 or 5 or 6 people, some get very insulted, very upset. Others take it lightly. Others didn't even notice it. So ask yourself this question: is there an alternative? And what I have found is there's always an alternative. And then you ask yourself my second favorite question, which is it worth it? Is whatever I have given up my peace in this moment for, is it really worth it? Is someone else's decision about what to say, what to do, how to act, what to wear, what choice they're going to make, is someone else's decision really worth my peace, my joy, my awakening, my freedom? And the answer is no. Nothing should be worth that. And so it doesn't mean that we don't try to change things. Spirituality is not complacency. This is really important to know. Spirituality does not mean you become a doormat, because of course that becomes the next question. Well, so then everybody's just going to walk all over you. When do you put your foot down? No one is saying be a doormat. No one is saying become complacent, indifferent, don't care. What spirituality is saying is, don't allow your inner sthiti, what we call your swasthiti, your own personal inner experience, to depend upon parasthiti, that which is happening in the world around you. Whether it's the weather, the stock market, a friend, a colleague, a family member, a pandemic. whatever it may be, the swasthiti is the only thing we have any control over. Parasthiti keeps changing. So we hold on to our swasthiti, because it's absolutely the most precious thing. And the last piece that I would mention is, and I say this specifically because I know you as someone who's so giving and caring and humble and generous, and sometimes there are situations that are problematic. But when we are on a spiritual path, we sort of feel like we have to keep doing it, no matter how difficult it is for us, because somehow it's unspiritual not to. And that isn't the case. If there's a particular situation, now obviously some situations are unavoidable. The ones in the home, nothing you can do. But there are other situations in our life that actually, frequently there's something we can do to change the situation, to make it less frustrating, less difficult, less problematic. And if we can, then we should. Spirituality doesn't mean thou shalt torture thyself. Put yourself unnecessarily in the most difficult, frustrating situations. I mean, yeah, that's a particular sadhana. If you want to do that, go right ahead. But it's not written anywhere that that's somehow a higher sadhana. There's a beautiful story that Pujya Swamiji tells from his youth, where when he was living here, when he was very young, a great saint had come to give satsang at the ashram, but he didn't want to stay at the ashram. He wanted to just live far off. He didn't want to have any of the comforts, any of the swavidha of the ashram. So he just lived way off up Ganga, right on the riverbank. But every day, Swamiji had the duty, he was very young, of going to pick up this saint and bring him back, walk with him to the ashram. And as he was walking, there would be cows in the road and other people in the road. And he took this duty very seriously. And he would push everything out of the way to make room for this great saint. Side, side, side. And finally, when they reached the ashram, this saint looks at him and he said, "Kis kis ko batate rahoge? Or kab tak batate rahoge? Apni rasta bana ke chalo." How many people, how many things are you going to keep moving out of the way? What obstacles are you going to keep trying to push out of the way? Don't worry about them. Let them be there. Just make your own way amidst these obstacles. Don't get stuck in them. So it's a very beautiful sutra for the frustration. Yes, of course. Yes.
My question is to the first part of your this conversation about Grihastha ashram.
Sure.
So Grihastha, from Indian point of view, is a collection of individuals. There are more than 2 individuals in one Grihastha, of different backgrounds, different characteristics, different age group, different thoughts.
Yes.
And in Indian context, this Grihastha stands on emotion more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second part of the last part of your line, that push the obstacles out and find your way. How can a person in that Grihastha ashram adopt that theory?
Don't push them out of the way. The teaching was, do not push them out of the way. Ki unko mat hatao. Don't worry about the cows. Don't worry about the people on the road. Just find your path. Now, in a Grihastha ashram, your path ends up being inevitably intricately woven with other people's paths, obviously. This is where, within that family, you have to see how can living in that family become your spiritual practice. If I think, yeah, I've got my family over here and I've got my spiritual practice over here, then you are stuck. Because then every minute that you are dealing with issues in the family, you're going to feel like I am not doing my spiritual practice. You're going to be fed up. You're going to be frustrated. How can you see these moments actually as part of your spiritual practice? Meaning, also then, you're not attached. You're engaged and connected, but not attached. So it's not the pushing away. It's the, in the midst of the family dynamic, in the midst of doing your duty, fulfilling your dharma, because there's the Grihastha dharma, of fulfilling your dharma in that family. How can you see that actually as your spiritual path? See the divine in the family members. But also remember, it's a collection, as you said, of individuals. Meaning, my role as a person in a family is not to give up my individuality. It's not about simply blending in and giving up that which is my own individual dharma. Because we all have individual characteristics, as you say. We also have individual dharmas. And so, yes, I'm going to see the family as my spiritual practice, but sometimes spiritual practice requires us to actually live a truth that is our truth that may not be someone else's truth. And there is nothing that says, thou shalt do whatever it takes to make sure that every single member of the family is always happy at all times. And the reason is, we're all living in different aspects of illusion and ignorance. This is why we pray, asatoma sadgamaya, right? Take us from untruth to truth, from darkness to light. We're all living in our own egos, in our own agendas, in our own attachments, in our own desires, in our own fears. So if you and I are in a family together, I might have a desire, an attachment that you act a certain way, not because it's good for you, but because it's what I want. Now, your role in this family is not to create a situation where I don't ever have to look at my ignorance, my ego, my attachments, my desires. Your role as a family member is not to prevent me from having to come face to face with the mirror of my own darkness or my own ignorance. A lot of times, sadly, in families, we've got this idea that somehow our dharma is just to keep everybody happy, nobody should get upset, which means nobody should ever have to change. Nobody should ever have to be challenged. Nobody should ever have to look at their own attachments. And that's not the case. And so when I speak about the family as a spiritual practice, well, when we talk about sadhana and tapasya, these are not words that imply just, being very conciliatory and calming everybody down. These are words of burning in fire. Sometimes in a family, someone's truth, and we see this a lot. Got a family full of doctors and the child wants to be a musician. Family full of engineers, the kid's an artist. Lots of pressure. But that doesn't mean that the child's responsibility in the family is to become the doctor or the engineer, just so that the family members don't have to look at their own attachments and expectations of what they think success is. Would be great for everybody to have to actually examine what we consider a successful life. Because of course everyone wants the best for their children, but we want the best based on our agenda. My parents had thought the best thing for me would have been to live down the block and pop out dozens of children. That was their agenda. Clearly, that was not my dharma. And obviously, over the 25 years I've been here, they changed completely. It was momentary, luckily, because they're very aware people, courageous people. But it wouldn't have done them any good for me to give up my dharma, move down the block, start popping out babies just because, they had wanted grandkids, so that they didn't have to look at their own agendas. The way they have grown and transformed has been miraculous. And I'm sure it wasn't always easy. I know it wasn't. So when you talk about the family and the responsibilities, yes, we have to live together in peace and harmony. But peace and harmony doesn't mean numbness. It doesn't mean that we ignore the individuals in this society of the family.
So can we say that to keep this family together, whatever an individual plays a part, that part should not be thought as a burden, but it should be part of that minor segment of that sadhana? Because I think it's like, because otherwise people say, woman says, why should I cook food for everyone? The husband says, why should I earn for everyone? The child says, I will do something for myself. So then the whole harmony.
Well, the system no longer works. Take that family. The woman stops cooking, the man stops earning. The kid never shows up. Well, you only have to give them about 72 hours to realize कि ऐसे नहीं चलेगा. They don't need shastra.
We have to tell them whatever you are doing, it's part of their sadhana, it's part of
But
your duty.
what I would
harmony there, alive.
What I would say to you is, it's very difficult to shove the truth down anyone's throat, especially when they're your family. No one wants to hear it. No one wants to hear it. Is say better, let the wife stop cooking and have no more money, and then the husband says, fine, take it. Now there's no money, now there's no food. Eventually they're going to look at each other across an empty table and say, chalo, aap kuch paisa leke aao, main kuch bana leti hoon. If it means they have to go hungry for a couple of days, it's better because they've actually learned the lesson on a deep level. Now she's not going to feel burdened, he's not going to feel burdened. They understand कि अच्छा ऐसे होता है. It would be like if in my body the stomach says, forget it, why I always have to digest food? Chordo? Well, the minute that the stomach stops digesting food, the whole body starts to shut down. So the minute the body starts to shut down, the blood that actually keeps the stomach as a stomach stops flowing. So suddenly the stomach isn't happy anymore because it's not getting this nice, fresh, beautiful supply of oxygen-rich blood. So it says to the lungs, Hare kar kya re? Mujhe blood chahiye. So the lungs are like, Hare, we can't pump, we have no food, we have no energy. So then they all will start doing their roles again. I've learned over the years that the greatest teachings are actually that which we experience. trying to shove something down someone else's throat, you get behavior modification at best. They'll do it eventually. If you are loud and annoying and obnoxious enough, they will do it just takiyap chupurahinge. And this is how families run. They're like, "Chalo, kar do nahi to, my God, janjar ho jayega." So they do it, but the point is that's not really what we want. We don't want our families to just obey us, taki we don't have a fit. We don't want a mother cooking for us just so that there's not a fight, or a father earning just so that there's not a fight. We want people doing things because they want to serve us. Food being cooked like it's a burden is poison. And any mother will tell you that. She knows.
Yes.
So it's better to be hungry and fast rather than force her to cook. As we all realize that we have a critical role to play in a family, in a society, we'll play it. This is why we need, when we talk about swadhyay, study, satsang. Why? Dhyan, why? Study of scriptures, why? Because this is where we actually learn these things on a very deep level. And then it starts to help us understand how to live our lives. Because whether it's a physical body or a family or a community or a company, where everyone is doing their own thing, no one survives. It only works when we work together in harmony, like the cells of the body. Let there be a mess for a while, if necessary. Eventually people will realize, oh, the bahut garbad ho gaya. It's also the last piece I would share is, sometimes the greatest teaching is just living it. Chalo, she doesn't feel like cooking? No problem. You go out and you earn anyway. You earn? Maybe bring home dinner. You earn, you stop somewhere on the way, you bring home dinner. Tell her there's not time for you to cook because you're out earning all day. But okay, you stop and you pick up something on the way home. She doesn't like it, maybe she'll cook. Or she's going to realize, Chalo, let me also be a productive member of the family. And if not, then okay, maybe you start working half-time and you cook. There's no set rule of who's supposed to do what. What matters is that everyone, whether it's a family, whether it's a community, any organization, we have to all work together for the greater good. Wherever there's selfishness or laziness or ego, everyone's going to suffer. And so what I would say is, if someone said, I don't want to cook or I don't want to earn, I'd say, fine. Can I suggest that you take a little pilgrimage to Rishikesh? Go spend a few days in an ashram. Like, really? Because it's not clearly just about cooking or earning. It means that there's something going on in their mind, that life is feeling like a burden. That the family is feeling like a burden, that their role is feeling like a burden. And it's not about getting everyone to behave. What we want is people who are inspired, doing what they do with love, with joy, with conviction. Otherwise, it's better not to do it. There's a beautiful, beautiful poem by Khalil Gibran called On Work. And I don't remember it exactly, but basically the gist of it is, if you cannot work with love, with gratitude for the opportunity to work, whatever the work is, in a family, in whatever work you have to do, it would be better that you sit in front of the temple and you beg for alms. Do not work when you feel like, oh, I don't want this, I don't want to be doing this, that you feel you're full of that poison inside. It's better sit outside and beg. And when you feel inspired, when you've been touched and awakened, then you serve.
But even he believes on individual characters, not on the family. He says eat from the same loaf of bread, but not from the same slice of bread.
Yes.
And then he writes metamorphosis also.
Yes.
Too much of work on an individual will create him like a creature. Because he's burdened by that family emotion. So ultimately what I feel like even in Hinduism, the first thing is individual. When you are happy, you can keep everyone happy. If you are not happy, you can't keep anyone
Absolutely.
happy.
Absolutely.
So individualistic approach for getting sadhana and happiness is the first step.
Absolutely.
Now, what was my question ultimately was, when we are in a Grihastha ashram, like you are following a philosophy or ideology, but your companions in the family may not be following because they are with the different age groups.
Yes.
My teaching or my child's teaching has been totally different. The world has changed. The external influence has changed. The ideology has changed. The transformation system, everything has changed.
Can we do one thing?
So it becomes very difficult to pass on my
Yes.
ideology to the new generation.
Let us do one thing. क्योंकि आज शाम के लिए समय थोड़ा सा खत्म हो गया थोड़ी देर पहले, but that's okay. आप कल भी हैं?
I'm in the morning here till 1 o'clock.
Wonderful. तो हम कल बात करेंगे अगर किसी तरह से आप.
मैं तब आता ही रहूँगा.
Wonderful.
I'm part of
So
your
let us.
family now.
Wonderful. So let us, because this is a very deep question. It's a very long question. It's not a like one line. It's a whole aspect of how we run the balance between the individual and the family. But what I would just conclude with saying is, if you take any tapestry, take this beautiful rug, take any tapestry. It is made up of individual threads. Each individual thread must be perfectly dyed, perfectly woven together. But ultimately, it's only when it's part of the tapestry that its full dharma is actually expressed. You could say that the dharma of the thread is to be part of that tapestry. And in the same way, each of us individually must do our sadhana, must fulfill our own individual dharma. But we must also recognize that we only are able to really fulfill that when we are part of the greater good. And whether it's an individual family, whether it's an ashram, whether it's a community, whether it's a nation, whether it's the world, that ultimately we are all threads being woven together consciously into this beautiful tapestry. And that's up to each of us individually, because when one thread is over, the whole thing falls apart. Just pull one thread out of a tapestry and the whole thing starts to unravel. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, a beautiful day for our family joining us from all over the world, and look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow.